What is up guys, Stu here. So later in the week, Wonder is released in UK cinemas. I got a chance to check it out early, so let's talk about that shit. So Wonder is the latest film from Steve Chbosky. It's Silent B, who is the dude that wrote and directed Perks of Being a Wallflower, a film I absolutely adore. And this time he's adapting someone else's best-selling novel, which is also called Wonder, which is a story of a boy with a facial deformity as he tries to navigate the difficult labyrinth that is school for kids. And I was excited for this just mainly because I was such a huge fan of Perks of Being a Wallflower, but this one it's not good. It's not really very good, guys. I mean, it's hard to be too cynical here for reasons I'll get into in a minute, but I mean, it's definitely not good. So we've got Jacob Tremblay here playing the lead role of Oggy, who is the boy with his facial deformity, as he's trying to go through high school and he's trying to make friends with new people, but he's sticking out like a sore thumb for obvious reasons. And Tremblay's good in this film. I mean, I loved him in Room, and this doesn't really seem to get to the heights of Room for him. That's mainly down to the stuff that he's given to work with here, but he does do a solid job. He's got a couple of those just downright adorable moments that we've come to expect from Jacob Tremblay, because the dude, he's a cool little kid. There's no denying that. And his parents in the film are played by Julia Roberts and Owen Wilson, who are also great. I can't really fault their performances too much, other than the fact that I don't think they're in the film as much as I'd have liked to have seen them in a film. I think there was a lot more room for their characters to be bigger roles here. But when they do pop up, I liked seeing them, particularly enjoyed seeing Owen Wilson in a film. He's probably the best thing about the film. But it's a film which is also filled with a lot of other child performances, because it takes place in a school filled with children. And that, I don't know about the child performance in this film. It's never fun shitting on a kid's performance, but they're not good. They're really not convincing. Then I'm also not sure I can entirely fault the kids as performers there so much as I can the stuff they're working with, because the screenplay and the performances go hand in hand, and when you haven't got that great a screenplay to work with, your performances aren't going to come off as that great. And that's the case here, because the screenplay, nowhere near as good as I'd expected it to be, coming from the guy that wrote and directed Perks of Being a Wallflower. I don't know, where Perks showed this real kind of understanding of the emotions that these characters were going through, and there was this true subtlety to it all. There was nuances, enough places for you to fill it in with your own knowledge and understanding of the stuff that these kids are going through. This one just feels like the entire opposite. Firstly, it just completely lacks subtlety. I mean, there isn't one line or one moment of dialogue in this film where I ever felt like I had to go hunting for a little bit of subtext there, and that I was learning something that hadn't explicitly been told to me. It's completely on the nose. But it's also a film which has a very clear kind of moral compass and a big message that it's trying to get across to its audience, and in doing so there, it focuses so much on that message that it kind of forgets to create or write characters that sound even remotely natural, like kids would talk in the real world. Because there's not really many points in this film where a character says something and they go, oh, okay, that's probably how that character would have said that. And it leads to lines like, I wrote this one down because this is one that stood out to me. I'm pretty sure it was this exact line. How can they expect you to fit in if you were born to stand out? That's what we're dealing with here. That's pretty much every scene is like a variation on lines like that. It's another one of those kind of like deep, meaningful life quote Tumblr films. Very jarring. Because people just don't fucking talk like that in real life. It doesn't happen. No. I don't know where films like this get this idea that that's vaguely natural for someone to say. I have never given any advice to anyone, and no one's ever given any advice to me that sounds anywhere near as poetic as that. Let alone kids. Kids wouldn't talk like this shit. It's forgetting that this film is set in a school of kids. If I was in fucking school and someone came up to me and was all weirdly poetic like that and was like, oh, in order to get to the tree, you've got to plant the seed within your soul first so that you can find love with one another. I'm like, get the fuck out of it. Can we just play Yu-Gi-Oh or something? Jesus Christ. And the message that's driving that throughout the film, this kind of message of inclusion and kindness, it's a lovely message. I absolutely agree that kids should be seeing stuff like this and learning about this stuff from an early age. But it is also, in a weird way, this film's biggest downfall. And I'm very aware that just made me sound like a dictator. Let me explain myself there. It's not so much that I have a problem with that message. It's that it dictates this film so much that it completely undermines the execution of everything else in this film. It's just scenes of Jacob Tremblay going into a situation where another kid's a dick to him, and then that kid learns that he wasn't supposed to be that much of a dick, and then they become nice and friends. It's every scene in this film. And I found the direction here to be equally as shoddy as the writing in that sense. I mean, it's a technically well shot film. I don't have any problems with the way it looks. It's kind of everything else, and as a whole, this film is filled with very weird decisions that it never really fully goes for. Sure, it's cool. This kid likes Star Wars, so why not throw in a couple of Star Wars references? Why not have some of Chewbacca or other Star Wars characters pop up? But it feels awkward because it doesn't really happen enough, I think. And so, like, oh, okay, there's a Star Wars character. This is creepy. In fact, in one scene, fucking Palpatine stood behind him in the classroom, and I think it's supposed to be like this quirky comedic moment, but it was weird and creepy. But also something that's perhaps a minor thing but really did bug me in terms of direction is the way it chooses to structure this, and it does a chapter style thing where it starts off and a title screen comes up, it says Oggy, the name of the lead guy there, and we're seeing that, and then it will go after about half an hour to another title screen of his sister's name. Cool, we're learning about his sister now, but then after 5 minutes it just goes back to Oggy's story again, so I don't really see the point in any of that. But it does it to characters who I have no reason to really be giving a shit about at this point in the film. It does it for the sister's best friend in the film, whose storyline is completely terrible and could be taken out of the film. I didn't give a shit about her at all, but her title comes up, and I genuinely felt myself in the cinema go, oh, fuck. But after 5 minutes, it just goes back to Oggy's story again. I don't see the point in having these chapters of different characters' names. Why? It's not showing their stories in the different chapters. It is just one long story with all of them intertwined. But that's also something that made me increasingly aware of the fact that I really didn't give a shit about half the characters in this film, which is a problem, given the message of this film. There's almost too many elements of this film thrown in an attempt to show so many different perspectives and so many different ways of looking at this single message. It doesn't really land many of them for me. And also, it's a film which is entirely filled with cliches. And this is a weird point for me to make because I don't really like the term cliche. I am often defending a lot of cliche in film because I don't think there's really anything wrong with cliche in film at this point. And it is often about the execution of those cliches for me. But I think there is a limit to how much cliche you can get in a film before it starts to become very unenjoyable. And this film kind of passes that quite early on. It did make me laugh a few points just because dramatic elements are thrown in completely out of nowhere and they never really seem to go anywhere else. They're just there to essentially just be in the film and just be one more thing you can add to the drama here. Case in point, there's a moment in the first half of the film. It's hilarious. Honestly, it's kind of so bad it's good, so I don't know if this is really a negative. But out of nowhere, the sister starts talking to this guy, and I don't remember how he gets onto it, but he's like, your grandma still loves you. But what? Out of nowhere? And it just cuts to this, firstly, weirdly green-screened moment on the beach between her and her grandma, where her grandma's just like, I love you, you're my favourite, and then it just cuts back to the rest of the film and we never see anything else about her and her grandma for the rest of the film. What? And that moment's the most obvious of the whole film, but there are countless moments where straight out of nowhere it will just be like, here's another piece of drama and emotion to suck on, cry now. It's incredibly manipulative at that point and very distracting. But, and I appreciate it's probably going to sound weird having a but after I basically just shat all over it, but the kind of wrapping up of a lot of the storylines in this film, I actually did think was executed not amazingly, but quite well. Couldn't help but feel myself getting a little bit welled up at the end. I like the message that this film goes for. I actually did think the ending was very touching. And I think there's a certain point where I kind of just let go of the fact that this film is shit and just started to enjoy the smaller moments in the film. And it's those moments which occasionally, and I'm sure probably accidentally, land quite well, which kind of make it impossible to be that cynical about this film. I can't actually say I was angry by all of this film because it is quite a lovely film. It's a nice message, and I do think it's an important message for kids to be seeing. It's almost like, yeah, go for it. Fine, have your film. If kids are going to enjoy it, and that's the audience it's for, why not? So I'm going to go ahead and give Wonder a very high 2 stars. But what about you guys? Have you seen Wonder? Have you read the book? Are you excited to see the adaptation of the book? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I'd love to know. And as usual, if you like this review and you want to see me talk about more shit, please consider clicking subscribe. That would be very tasty. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers.